The year is 1990. It's cold and snowing outside. You look under the Christmas tree, eager to start opening gifts. But you have to eat your Christmas breakfast first. You scarf down your breakfast like there's no tomorrow, and rush to find Nintendo's 16-bit console under the tree, the Super Nintendo. The Super Nintendo is a truly remarkable system that remains people's favorite to this day. Whether you're battling Kefka in an epic battle, or taking on King K. Rool, there's something for everyone. Some of the best RPGs and platformers came from a console with no internet, no DLC, just 16 bits of beauty. Now, let's dive into it. But before we start, merch in the description down below. Why was the Super Nintendo so important? What made it so damn good? Well, it simply defined 2D gaming and what it could be. Not only just looking better, but controlling better. The worlds are more colorful, and the level designs are deeper. The game music didn't just sound like beeps anymore. It really elevated what music could be in gaming, such as full-blown orchestras. Just listen to this. The NES, although fun, lacked games with a good story. None other than Final Fantasy suffered for it, in my opinion. And the Super Nintendo was the first to challenge that, creating worlds and characters you root for. The Super Nintendo was innovation without ever losing its fun. From its childlike chaos in Yoshi's Island to the more gothic horror like Castlevania, the developers' imaginations finally had no limits to their creativity. Games for the Super Nintendo can get a little bit pricey. I'm looking at you, Earthbound. Hell, outside of Earthbound, games such as Super Metroid, Final Fantasy, and Super Castlevania were all a pretty penny. Though your Donkey Kong Countries and your Marios aren't too bad, arounding $35 to $40 each. If you can, in your budget, afford to get a more expensive game, you can't go wrong with Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI is an epic journey that easily took me 30, probably well past 40 hours, and had me at the edge of my seat so many times. Earthbound was the game that made me like JRPGs. Final Fantasy secured my love for them. I think, besides the PS2, the Super Nintendo does the best at thorough epic stories for a lot of games. The Super Nintendo games, as well, usually have killer soundtracks. It feels like most devs really went all out for the music on the system. While we're on the topic of games, getting rid of region lock on your Super Nintendo is very simple. All you really have to do is take off the shell and pry off 2 latches and boom, you're good to go. The only small gripe, being an American with the Super Nintendo, is that Nintendo kinda censors many religious themes in the North American versions.
To better adapt these games to their foreign audiences, covering up well-accepted naked Greek statues, removing religious symbols and references, and of course, taking half the fun out of Mortal Kombat with the no blood.
So, as an American, it seemed like Japan got the original version or cooler variant, in my opinion. These are 5 Super Nintendo games I highly recommend for everyone. Number 1. We have Final Fantasy VI. Final Fantasy VI is an epic story, epic music, and memorable characters. Number 2, Donkey Kong Country. This is a fun 2D platformer, and you really can't go wrong with DK Country 1 or 2. The third one is mixed in my opinion. While it's not awful, it can be fun. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Turtles in Time. This is a beat 'em up with time travel mechanics, which let the devs really get creative in the levels, which can be played solo or with a friend. Number 4. Super Castlevania. This is an action side-scroller with horror elements, which was one of the first games to utilize Mode 7 graphics with its chandelier level. This game can get really hard, but is also very rewarding. Number 5. F-Zero. This futuristic racer really utilized Mode 7 and created a franchise that is now dead.
Look how they mess with my boy.
But if you love F-Zero X or even F-Zero GX, you really should see where it all started. The tracks, in my opinion, are really pretty, and the controls are nice. This list, however, doesn't even begin to touch the surface of what you could enjoy, because there's always Super Metroid, Final Fight, Super Mario World, and so much more. Now, let's get into something the Super Nintendo did really well, and what it did better than the NES, other than it being a 16-bit console. It's a little thing called Mode 7. Mode 7 essentially allowed for rotating and scaling, and it created a pseudo 3D-like experience. I think F-Zero really did this well. Although the game is in 2D, the devs were able to manipulate background layers, like tracks that appeared to curves would tilt around the player's vehicle. Games that really utilized this were something else. Let's talk display options for beginners. I highly recommend a CRT if doable, even if it's a smaller one like my Insignia. Retro Tinks are also good options. If this adapter is your best option, then don't forget to put on a game mode. At least it'll help with input delay a little bit, but the visuals will still look pretty bad. Now, I can't talk about accessories as I don't have any for the Super Nintendo, unfortunately. The only thing I can say is use these dust covers. They're really cheap, and some retro stores may even include one with your Super Nintendo game purchase if you ask. The Super Nintendo is a remarkable console that I have had the pleasure of spending dozens upon dozens of hours on, and I really think it is worth it to get one, even still in 2025. Despite Nintendo offering SNES emulation on the Switch, when you have the original controller in hand and a CRT, or at least a good display, it's truly magical. Now, before I sign off, tell me your favorite memories of the Super Nintendo, and what games do you recommend for beginners?